this is an area where Ben Carson, as the head of HUD, could apparently do way more harm than I had thought that he could. So he's going to be in charge of tens of billions of dollars of funding that will go towards government housing. In a lot of cases, that will be the construction of housing. And I had briefly forgotten that we have a president who's in the business of housing. And so thankfully, Elizabeth Warren did not forget about that. And so she's going to find out about the potential conflicts of interest from having a guy with no experience other than that he's apparently buddies with Trump now in charge of all of that funding, which you'll see in this video.
Now, housing development is an area in which President-elect Trump and his family have significant business interests. Can you assure me that not a single taxpayer dollar that you give out will financially benefit the president-elect or his family?
Well, Senator, I was worried that you wouldn't get back. Thank you for coming back. I will absolutely not play favorites for anyone.
Dr. Carson, let me stop right there. I'm actually trying to ask a more pointed question, and it's not about your good faith. That's not my concern. My concern is whether or not, among the billions of dollars that you will be responsible for handing out in grants and loans, can you just assure us that not $1 will go to benefit either the president-elect or his family?
It will not be my intention to do anything to benefit any American.
I understand that.
It's for all Americans,
but
everything that we do.
Do I take that to mean that you may manage programs that will significantly benefit the president-elect?
You can take it to mean that I will manage things in a way that benefits the American people. That is going to be the goal.
To the best you understand that.
If there happens to be an extraordinarily good program that's working for millions of people, and it turns out that someone that you're targeting is going to gain, $10 from it, am I going to say, no, the rest of you Americans can't have it? I think logic and common sense probably would be the best way.
The problem is that you can't assure us that HUD money, not of $10 varieties, but of multi-million-dollar varieties, will not end up in the president-elect's pockets. And the reason you can't assure us of that is because the president-elect is hiding his family's business interests from you, from me, from the rest of America. And this just highlights the absurdity and the danger of the president-elect's refusal to put his assets in a true blind trust.
So, look, maybe I'm looking at this in the worst possible light, I don't know. But that performance that we just saw there, and his inability to simply agree with what should be clear, I believe that the only reason he has been nominated is to assist Donald Trump in the looting of America. Like, the $10 thing, they're going to give money to the Trump organization.
Mm-hmm. So
no one's going to stop them.
So Ben Carson doesn't have much of a moral compass. Now, that seems like a harsh thing to say, but I've gone over this in the primaries when he was running. He's the guy who does all these fantastical, ridiculous stories about how he was a violent black man and he would stab his friends and hit his mom with a hammer, but he was saved by the Lord Jesus Christ and became enlightened and educated. It's a story tailor-made for white racists. Oh, yeah, well, the blacks are savages, but they can be saved by Jesus. We knew it, and they buy his books, and they pay him a lot of money for speeches. Now, he knows what he's doing. Now, you might not know why he does those super weird stories. Why would someone brag about hitting their mom with a hammer, which he, by the way, didn't even do, right? Or stabbing their friend with a knife that happens to hit their belt buckle. He didn't even do, right? And there's no witnesses of any of that. And how he would save white people from other black savages when they were rioting. A story that also is backed up by no witnesses. Yeah. He does all of that, and he knows what he's doing to appeal to white racists so they'll pay him. The man has no moral compass whatsoever. So if business is in property, and the one department that deals with property is housing and urban development, and you wanted someone with no moral compass who will do whatever you want, the guy you pick might be Ben Carson. And so it is interesting and telling that he won't say something as simple as, No, of course I'm not going to have a conflict of interest and let the president profit from decisions I make in his own administration. That's an easy answer,
He
right?
refused to do it.
And he wouldn't even do it. He wouldn't even do it. So,
That's ominous.
man, and so all this whole thing that he was taught that, oh, do a joke in the beginning that was like the most awkward laugh.
Nobody else is laughing.
Glad
Nobody's
you came back, Elizabeth Warren, to kick my assets all over the place. Right? So that's not going to cover up for the substance of what you're saying, which is, yeah, maybe Trump makes a lot of money off of this. Oops, did that happen? Well, it was because it was to the benefit of the American people. You don't want to sign up for membership?
Wrong.
You're going to love membership. tytnetwork.com/join.